Welcome to ClueCon Weekly. Join us every Wednesday to learn about the latest cutting-edge developments in the real-time communications industry. ClueCon Weekly is brought to you by FreeSwitch Solutions. Get support and professional services directly from the creators of the FreeSwitch open source project, solving your issues in the most efficient, stable, and scalable way possible. Get the FreeSwitch advantage. Visit freeswitch.com. Also brought to you by ClueCon, the premier technology conference for developers by developers. Join us every summer in Chicago. ClueCon kicks off on Monday with our annual hackathon, The Coder Games, followed by 3 days of technology-rich presentations discussing telecom, WebRTC, and IoT from developers around the world. To learn more, visit ClueCon.com or call 877-74-CLUE.
Man, welcome to ClueCon Weekly. Today is the 30th of January, 2019. And this week we're going to be joined by Bogdan from the OpenSIPS project. If you guys don't know what OpenSIPS is, it is a SIP proxy software that's been around for quite a while. Has its DNA roots going all the way back to the original SIP Express router. And Bogdan's been working on it for many years. And he's going to be talking to us today about what's coming up in OpenSIPS 3.0. So you guys don't want to miss out on that. If you have questions about it, you'll be able to ask him later on in the stream. First, let's jump over to Miss Abby. How are you doing today, ma'am? Uh-oh, you're muted, Abby. There you go.
Okay, hi guys. We are here at IT Expo. The exposition or the expo part hasn't started yet. It's not till 5 o'clock, I do believe. But we have our booths all set up. FreeSwitch training is going on right now in the other room. It's going great, and things are looking up. Luckily, we have the cold weather. It's nice and warm here, so that's very sorry for all of you guys who are stuck in the cold, but we're doing pretty great over here. So if you are at IT Expo, please come visit us at our booth. We are at 1002 if you'd like to come visit us. We are giving away a free copy of our FreeSwitch book. Anthony Minasali also has a talk coming up. He is on a panel called, it's called The Next Generation Collaboration Tools, and that is at 9 a.m. in room 2009. Other than that, we're just getting ready for ClueCon. I know it's pretty early, but you can never start too early, which is why we are having our early bird special. All right. Time for Community Corner.
Uh-oh, I think we lost their video, but they're still there.
We're still here.
Hello, hello everybody. Today we have a question for Mike Jarris, and that question is from Nandi. Nandi asks, is it possible to choose which ICE candidate to use? I found there are private candidates in the internal LAN network and public candidates. I want to choose, for example, the public candidate. Where and how is this done?
All right, so both in Mod SignalWire, in Mod Sophia and Mod Verdo, there are profile parameters for a candidate's ACL. And what the candidate's ACL does is it provides you an ordered list of network blocks, and it's ordered in priority about which candidates you want to select. So the way we work with ICE Lite is we don't do a full ICE engine on our side because we're on static addresses. We preset those, and it lets it be a lot more lightweight on our side. And as a result of that, it takes a little bit more setup, but it does let us do much higher performance on ICE than a full ICE client. So you have this ACL, and you set the network blocks in order of the priority you want to pick. So you'd have two different profiles, one for internal, one for external. And on the internal one, you add your local network blocks into the top of that ACL to select the right candidates.
So allow the good ones and deny the bad ones.
Yeah, it's you're looking to match first the things that you want to be your candidates.
Cool.
And order matters. It's a priority order for first month of March.
Mike, we miss seeing you. No black screen.
I mean, I can see myself. We're on a tethered connection in an expo hall, so not surprisingly that didn't work out so well.
Yeah.
Oh man, I can.
So they're sitting down at IT Expo in Florida in a conference hall, and if anybody's ever been to conferences, you know how bad
They have the worst Wi-Fi.
They have the worst Wi-Fi. They have the worst cell phone connectivity, especially in tech conferences, because they put 1,000 tech geeks in a little bitty space and not enough bandwidth to go around every time.
Oh man, I'll never forget last year how packed the booth was. Like we had all the available space was there, and then we were bleeding into the aisles, and then like the booths next to us too. So guys, good luck with all the crowds when they come.
Yep.
Okay, so
real quick, Abby, which booth are you guys in? Is it 1002?
1002.
1002.
So go and visit them in 1002. Today we have Bogdan from the OpenSIPS project. So Bogdan, you got some really cool stuff coming out. You've been doing lots of planning, and there's new releases in the works. And so tell us all about it.
First, hi, Michael. Hi, Ken. It's good to be back again to the ClueCon Weekly. I don't remember when was the last time. I think somewhere last year, maybe somewhere around the same time of year before the releases, because we, in terms of planning, we try to get one major release per year, more or less in the same time of year, somewhere around end of March be the beta release. So yes, we are getting closer to the end of March. So we are getting closer to the new OpenSIPS release. This time will be 3.0. So we are shifting with one major number in the version. So from the 2.x family to the 3.x, and behind this change in the major version number is also a bit of a change in the release focus. In the previous releases, the main topic was all the time something very technical. Like, okay, with the 2.4, we had the clustering support. In the 2.3, we had interoperability and integration with FreeSwitch, with Homer, with other kind of external softwares. Well, this time, in the 3.0, the focus is not necessarily on getting more feature that you can use in OpenSIPS, but mainly, let's say, maintaining OpenSIPS when it comes to using and operating it. So basically, it's a 3.0 release. It's focused on the DevOps aspects when it comes to OpenSIPS. Shortly said, what we try to achieve with the 3.0 is first to make the user, actually the script writer experience, to improve it and to make it easier, in terms of working with the OpenSIPS script. And secondly is about the operational aspect, again, to help people operating OpenSIPS platform to understand what's going on, to make their life easier when it comes to troubleshooting, to be able to monitor in a proper way, and so on. Because we say, at the end of the day, it's good to have a really powerful and feature-rich engine, but at the same time, it really helps to be able to control it and to understand what's going on with it when you are operating. I think most of us went to, these kind of a really, really stressful moments when, you have a production system, something goes wrong and you have no idea why and what is going wrong. So you're just looking logs and nothing makes sense to you. And you're trying desperately to find, okay, what should I do? What's going on? What's wrong? Where should I start from investigating? Well, these kind of things we are trying to cover with the 3.0. So again, simplify the experience as a script writer. Basically, that's the dev side. And also on the ops side to improve a lot in terms of, let's say, operational aspects, what you can do with OpenSIPS. So that's at least the main topic.
Well, I was going to say, Xlog is your friend.
Yes, it is, but it's a very, how to say, rudimentary or primitive friend. It's your monkey friend. I would prefer like a human friend, something more intelligent.
Well, what I thought was really wonderful was when you guys, you had people vote on the feature request, because it's always great to go out to the community and see what people want, and to publish the feedback. I thought that was really cool. That was really great.
Yes, and that's an important aspect of being an open project. So like an open source project, it's not necessarily only about, guys, take the sources, do whatever you want, leave me alone. So that's not more or less the philosophy of an open source project, at least not for us. We try with OpenSIPS project to address some real needs. So, to find what are the typical usage cases or what are the needs of people out there using OpenSIPS. So, we can address them, because, the value of a tool, it's given by how useful it is when it comes to, real life. So, yes, we made a list of topics into this, let's say, DevOps area. We thought topics which can be doable, in terms of implementation, which makes sense from overall release packing. And we said, okay, let's grab the community's opinion on this to see if indeed they will find the same, the things as useful as we think. At least to make a priority between all these items, and also to see maybe there is something that we definitely completely missed in terms of what else should be in there. And that was a great feedback in terms of what other kind of crazy things people have in mind when it comes to using OpenSIPS. That was again an awesome experience, getting all this feedback and trying to comparing with what's our opinion on this release and priorities versus what the community thinks of the same thing.
So the results, did they come out as you expected, or so it was kind of like, it was almost like a democratic republic, right? So you guys put like a list of like a half a dozen things, and then people like kind of rated them according to what they wanted to see.
Yes, it may sound strange what I'm saying, that, okay, the full democracy is bad sometime. People may have a different level of knowledge in terms, the ability of each person to evaluate what's on the list. But that doesn't prevent, people to express their opinion and, needs. But yeah, there was quite, like, I would say, like a 50% matching in terms of what are the important things on the list, and 50% of, let's say, surprises. Things that we said, oh yeah, that would be cool to have, And actually, one of these things, like cool things that ended up on the list in the last, minutes before putting everything together, ended up on, I think, on position number 2 on the list in terms of, community opinion on their importance. So yes, there were a couple of surprises. Of course, there were also surprises in the other way. Like we said, wow, this will be cool. Everybody will love it, and ended up on the last place. So
But you also
yeah.
you also get that feedback naturally though, because you get it through like Slack channel, people asking questions, stuff like that, feature requests.
Yes, that's true. Actually, the mailing list, it's the most important communication channel with at least with the users. In the same time, the GitHub Hub tracker, it's really important when it comes to discussions with let's say at the feature level. So people asking for features, trying in the same time to put or let's say to pack the features in a way that makes sense, because we are not simply piling up everything. We try to again put them together in a consistent way that can be used or reused in other situations. So not again a simple pack of whatever bits and pieces as features coming from different parts. So all this takes a lot of effort, trying to understand what that guy wants to do, then trying to look from a more generic perspective, or how you can do it in a more generic way, and then how you can actually fit it into OpenSIPS or in SIP scenarios, how much sense it makes, and so on. And then you say, yeah, okay, yeah, the end result is let's do this actually. So it's a long process.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know I use all my infrastructure is all OpenSIPS, right? From anything that touches the public, it's all OpenSIPS. And I remember sending you some configs, and you must have been like, "Oh my god."
It's not like that. I mean, I'm not saying because you are here and wow, what can I say now? um, Looking at some other people's config gives you like a glimpse in um, uh, outside your own bubble, because let's say we saw things a bit in unnatural, because we write the code, we write scripts that perfectly emulates on the actual code in terms of how the whole OpenSIPS is designed. But in the same time, this somehow limits your vision in how you can use. And looking at other people's scripts, you say, wow, okay, look, this guy, put some other kind of bits and pieces together and was able to get at the end something, cool that nobody thought about it. So yeah, it's a kind of a continuous valuable feedback when you look in, again, other people config files, because it's an external opinion on how should OpenSIPS be used, on how the different kind of features should be combined in the script, and so on. So in that case, you can understand maybe what are some missing features or pieces that may bring some value into OpenSIPS.
And so part of 3.0 is going to streamline part of this process, right?
Yes. So if I can, sharing with you, we have a web page where we publicly listed OpenSIPS 3.0 planning, basically describing what's the philosophy of this release, and in the same time going a bit in not necessarily in details, but listing what are the areas we are working on for both let's say chapters, like script development, so the dev part, and also for the operational aspects. So what are the things that we consider as valuable to be done for the 3.0? Basically, in more or less 2 months, a month from now, these should be implemented in the new release. Of course, there is no 100% guarantee because it's about available time, and sometimes it's quite difficult to be able to evaluate in a perfect manner how much time and how much effort would be required for implementing this. Because at the end of the day, that's work that goes public. So basically, you do for free. So that was one of the reasons why we said, okay, let's do this kind of a polling public to get the feedback from the community, because the minimal result we can get out of this is at least make a priority list. So what's the most important? What's the less important? And we can start implementing from the very important things to say that if time is not available, at least we will be able to cover and get in the 3.0 the most important set of features. So if you look at the end, yeah.
One of the things that I always found so useful is actually in the docs, right? At the very bottom, you see all the different commits and everything. And so you can see like what parts are active. And from there, then you take a closer look at the documentation to kind of see how it's changed and the new features that come in and all that stuff.
Yes, that's something new, completely new that we did in starting with I think last year, mid-year, somewhere during the summer. It's more or less about the respect we are paying back to the developers, and as you said, in the same time you can see how actively maintained different kind of modules are. So all that information, it's actually extracted based on the real commits from the Git history, from the Git repository history. We said that's the most fair way of, again, paying back our respects to everyone along the history, who contributed to the code that forms OpenSIPS at this very moment. And there are two ways of listing people working on a certain module, either we call it by volume. So basically, how many commits, how many lines of code that person contributed to the module, and in the same time you can see a different listing in terms of last people who worked on the most lately active people on that module, because there are module in there for more than 15 years. So think about there are developers contributing something and then after that maybe disappearing. So and somebody else takes the job of maintaining that particular module. And it's a useful information to know, let's say, who has lately the expertise in working on that module, because when there is a bug report about a certain module, at least you can go there, look at and see, okay, who are the people who might have some knowledge to help you in the matter. So that was a great effort, thanks to Liviu. He put together some awesome scripts to actually collect and build from the Git history all these statistics about overall contribution, about contribution in the last years over different modules. But again, from our perspective, that's the best way to pay our respects to whoever wrote so far code into OpenSIPS.
Okay, so you have a PowerPoint presentation for us.
It's not a PowerPoint presentation. I hate PowerPoint presentation, to be honest. I will stick to the web page, And we can go through the items just to give you a glimpse into the 3.0 list of features. Not necessarily to get into the details, but again, just to understand the direction we are going with this release. Starting with the development aspect, basically by development we understand people writing scripts of OpenSIPS scripts, so it's not like code developers. We want to make life easier for these script developer persons with the new upcoming version. One of the important things we want to do is to add the full pre-processing support. And because we don't want to reinvent the wheel, to make our own preprocessor for the config file, so to allow you to do defines, to allow to do if statement, again, pre-processing things. We simply want to integrate OpenSIPS with the most used external pre-processing tools like M4, Jinja, Embedded Ruby, or whatever. The beauty, besides getting the full pre-processing support, is the fact that you can align your OpenSIPS deployment with whatever you have right now on your system, because everybody has different kind of automatic deployment system combined with templating support and so on. Some of you may be using Jinja, maybe some other people are using M4. So we cannot make everybody happy by simply developing providing one of the support only for one. So we said, like, okay, what the heck? Let's provide support for all of them. So the plan is to use again these external engines to do the in an let's say a built-in way the pre-processing support for OpenSIPS.
And so this is very important when you have like a dozen proxies out there, or 24 proxies, or 36 proxies.
Yes, I mean definitely. Think about, you may have like active backup systems. You may have like a clustering with a lot of nodes where you just want to change IP, maybe passwords, maybe some small parts of the script and so on. So yes, at the end of the day, you just want to maintain only one template and just deploy on dozens of servers using the pre-processing. So makes your life quite easy when it comes to writing the script, because you just maintain one copy. And even let's say considering the fact that you don't do multiple deployments, so it's one instance, you may have like IPs, or I don't know, let's say domain names or whatever they may keep. They may be used in multiple places in your config file. So if it comes to changing it, you don't have to go and change it in 10 places. You just change one define and that's it, you are done. So it's safer in terms of, let's say, human errors when it comes to changing your config file.
Cool.
Something that was highly voted by people was the full variable support. Basically, right now, in terms of accepting variables in as parameters for the functions you use in the script, was up to the actual function if it was able to handle or not parameters. So for whatever function you are using, you had to go in the documentation, check, okay, is it accepting variables or not for that particular parameter. So you had limitations because not all the functions do accept. And at the same time, it's quite difficult to work because you have to check and recheck all the time the docs for that. Well, with the 3.0, we want to move all this variable evaluation support at the script level directly in the script interpreter, so it will not be the function responsible for doing that, first of all. And secondly, automatically all the functions or whatever you do in the script will have full variable support. So you will you'll benefit of this. And secondly, you don't need to check all the time docs just to see if yes or no. So that's something that we want to do.
That's a great design change.
Yes, in the same time, this kind of changes with a high impact are quite difficult. Even if it's complex from a from coding perspective, sometimes it's easier to do a change which has a very small, let's say, impact. Like I'm just adding a quite complex but new feature. Okay, it's quite contained. Sometimes it's easier to develop. But even if you do like evaluation for the variables, right? Okay, we have tons of code doing evaluation for variables. So in terms of code complexity from this perspective, it's peanuts. But when you think, okay, you want to go and cover the whole script, so you have to touch quite the sensitive part, and also with the, it has a quite large impact, then it's a bit difficult because you have to cover a lot of cases. You have to be careful not to break things. You have to make to cope with I don't know how many scenarios in terms of coding and so on. So yeah, the difficult part is more like to make a global support rather than the actual feature provided by the support.
That's interesting. But you're gonna have, in order to upgrade to 3.0, it's gonna make it a little bit more complicated at the same time.
Well, let's say from this perspective, at least like variable support and pre-processing, probably 90% of the cases will be backward compatible, because you are just able to support more variables. I mean, in more places of variables. So again, it should be backward compatible. Nevertheless, for some features, like maybe renaming variables or changing the format of the script, we may we are looking into building small migration scripts for the OpenSIPS config files. So something that from syntax perspective, it's able to migrate a 2.4 script to the 3.0 script. So you don't have to go and check, what's the new name for this variable, or what's the new format for this parameter or for the script, and so on. So it will help a lot in terms of migrating and adopting the 3.0.
So very similar to like the schema changes between the version type scripts.
Yes, yes, exactly. Other examples we're looking in, again, simplifying how the scripts are written to standardize the actual format for some really complex parameters. I mean, some parameters are simply like, okay, you pass an integer or a string. These are like basic things. But some parameters are really complex. For example, when you do, there is an SQL caching module, and through a single parameter you have to define, okay, what's the name of the table, what's the column that you want to be used as an index in terms of caching for accessing, then what are the other columns that you want to be cached, and so on. So it's a quite complex definition for doing the caching for a single table, and there are several parameters with similar let's say complexity. But the problem right now, it's depending on the developer who wrote that code, we have maybe like 4 or 5, or I don't know how many ways of let's say encoding this kind of a complex parameter. So basically the syntax inside this kind of parameters. Well, so okay, we want to standardize. So you don't have this kind of problems like, okay, how should I structure the parameter, or can I make a space here, or what's the separator? It's a list. So what's the separator? It's a pipe sign, it's a semicolon, it's a column, what it is, because each maybe parameter had its own encoding format. So this will at least simplify, because the syntax for all these parameters. So okay, you just need to know what you have to put in there. You don't have to bother about, okay, how should I encode it?
So I guess that's quite common when you have a lot of different contributors, because you're talking about like just simple things like that. Everyone has a different 50 cents of how they like to have it done, right?
Yes. I mean, again, think about they are like I would say more than 15 years of history in terms of code writing into the what we have right now as OpenSIPS. So there were like many developers. How the let's say how the code was structured, and how the scripting should look like. All these things changed across the years. Different people had different opinions on that. So yeah, you have right now kind of a bit of a mess in terms of as you said, each developer with his own 50 cents on the matter. We said, okay, this kind of practice has to stop. We need to align in terms of how things should look in the configuration file, because at the end of the day, the real winner of this is the actual user, the person writing the OpenSIPS script. If this operation of producing an OpenSIPS config file is really difficult, of course, we're gonna lose, because the learning curve, or let's say the bad experience, will keep people away from using OpenSIPS. So we don't want to have this as a let's say blocker when it comes to using OpenSIPS.
Cool.
And I think the most important actually things into 3.0 are actually going into the operational side. So what features will impact how you operate OpenSIPS? And again, we are looking from the perspective of operating OpenSIPS in production environments, where everything is really, really sensitive. You don't want to change too many things. You have to be gentle. So if in order to do this, you need to have the proper tools for, let's say, managing OpenSIPS. And yes, one of the most the one on the top when it comes to community needs was the script reloading. So basically, the ability to reload OpenSIPS at runtime, because
That's cool.
right now, even if you change one character, sign or a letter or whatever in your config, you just need to reload. To restart. And
And when you
when
do
you
that, you
do,
lose all the you lose all the local stores and everything like that.
well, let's say most of the runtime data may have some persistency across databases, but doesn't really matter how fast the restart is. You'll lose some packages, so some transaction will get broken, some calls will be dropped, and again, it's not the kind of things that you want. It's not the kind of a service you want to provide to your customers. So usually right now the approach is, let's schedule a maintenance window somewhere in the middle of the night, just to do a restart for changing, I don't know, some small value. So the holy grail, let's say, of from the operational perspective, is avoid as much as possible any kind of restart of the services, because each restart has, a smaller or a higher impact on your server service. As I said, in the best case, you may lose packages and so on. In the worst scenario, if your service relies on a lot of data that has to be loaded and cached at startup, an OpenSIPS restart may translate even in minutes of service being down. Even if OpenSIPS may start as an application and it's ready to handle, maybe in the back it's still crunching data, loading data from the database, like maybe millions of routing rules or rating rules or profiles or whatever. And basically without that data, OpenShift more or less is not able to route your calls. So you have to wait until everything is loaded into memory. So that's why sometimes the restarts can be really, really painful. So yeah, that's the first thing that we want to do in order to avoid the restart. So to be able to reload the script logic, so just the routing part, the routing blocks, not you will not be able to, through a reload, to change what modules you load or configuration of OpenSIPS and stuff like that, or listeners, because that's really, really difficult to do with with the current OpenSIPS architecture. So basically, you need to rewrite completely, because more or less whatever it's inside, it's designed in a quite static way from this perspective.
Yeah, see, I remember talking to like a national carrier, and they had millions of numbers in derouting. And so it took them a while to get them loaded.
Yeah, that's the typical problem. You may have either for routing purposes, either for DIDs, either for doing LNP. So anyhow, you may end up with hundreds of millions of rules into a database. And okay, you want to cache for runtime performance, to cache everything in memory. But this initial caching process takes a while, of course. And you will do it each time when you start OpenSIP. So you want to minimize this by avoiding restart. Still, we want to even more reduce the impact of restarts, or the need for a restart with other kind of features. So not only the script reload, we want to be able to do runtime changes of the parameter in the modules. There are a lot of simple module parameters, like okay, you define in the transaction engine what's the ringing timeout. Okay, you have it like, let's say 20 seconds. You want to make it a 25, the default. Well, just for this change, you have to restart, which is really painful. So for certain parameters, you'll have the option to actually change their value at runtime through the management interface. Again, avoiding the need of an restart. Something that a feature that took us by surprise in terms of how well received was by community is the auto scaling in terms of number of processes, because currently from a number of processes, OpenShift is quite static. You have to configure in the very beginning, okay, I want to use this amount of number of processes in order to handle the SIP traffic. If you get in the situation to get more traffic, maybe after weeks, months, or whatever, what do you have to do? Okay, you have to restart to increase the number of processes. Well, with this feature, OpenSIPS will have the ability to automatically monitor the internal load and to scale up and down, of course, the number of processes handle the traffic. So in that case, as time as the machine has resources, you'll never be in the situation of, oh, I need to restart to put more processes so OpenSIPS can cope with my volume of traffic. Because again, when certain threshold in terms of load will be reached, OpenShift will spawn automatically additional processes. Or if the traffic gets low under a certain threshold, it will terminate certain processes. So it will reduce the, let's say, footprint in terms of resources. Let's say during the night, maybe traffic is just 10%, so automatically will scale down. During the day, it will go back, scaling up according to the traffic you have. So you don't have to worry about this, like, oh my God, is my OpenSIPS configured with enough number of processes? And secondly, you don't need to restart if you want to change this value. Just as a note, spawning new processes, it's not a simple job, because let's say in looking let's to an HTTP server with an Apache where the processing it's really contained, so there is more or less no need for processes to communicate one each other, because you just get a request, generate a reply, that's it, end of story. So in that case, it's quite easy to create additional processes. Well, with OpenSIPS is more complicated because there is a lot of communication, synchronization, data exchanged with between the processes. So creating a new process is not like just okay, fork and that's it. I have a new process, because you have to integrate it and to ensure the communication between all the processes. So yeah, it's a bit tricky. Still, we can do it, no problem.
That's cool.
Yeah. Other really interesting things, which again was really well received like with the community, was the ability to, sorry, not this one. Yeah, this one. Internal memory persistency during restart. We talked before about OpenSIPS caching a lot of data. Well, it would be nice if this cache, data cache is persistent during restart. So when OpenSIPS starts again, basically you don't have to redo the whole caching, time-consuming process, but simply, let's say, attach again to the already existing cached data and just use it. So in this case, you can restart with more or less zero penalty in terms of reloading the hundreds of millions of routing rules or numbers or anything like this. And just to be
That's
more,
a key feature. That's a
yeah,
that really is. That's awesome.
actually, we let's say we felt this need also from our own experience running other OpenShips based systems, and we came across this issue like, oh my god, I don't want to restart because again it will take I don't know how many seconds in order to reload all the data, and then I have to tell to the operator like why the service was down for I don't know what number of seconds. So nobody wants to justify anything like this. So better don't do it. Yeah. So we said, okay, let's think of a solution for this, because it's a problem, at the end of the day. Yeah. Well, there are several other maybe not so features, not with such a great impact, like the ability to select the type of memory manager at runtime, because, well, I'm not sure if how many people do know, but OpenSIPS has its own internal memory manager, so it doesn't rely on the operating system for managing the memory. And there are different flavors. Some of them good for debugging, some of them good for performance, and sometimes you may simply want to use a different one. So right now it's a compile option, which makes life quite difficult if, let's say, somebody reports, well, I suspect my OpenSIPS has experienced a memory leak. Well, okay, first you have to investigate if it's a leak or not. So for that, you have to enable a special memory manager just to get extra information to be able to say, yeah, it was a leak, or simply memory was not enough, overall. And, to go to people saying, you have to recompile. And then, that's the end of the discussion, because most of the people do their own packages. So basically recompiling, it's not much of an, let's say, option. So yeah, we want to simplify this by making the selection of memory manager an runtime option rather than an compile time. We did some work which is already completed to unify some way of controlling the clustering in different modules, because in this clustering environment, sometimes you have some operations which needs to be controlled over the cluster. For example, you have users registered, and okay, in terms of doing the pinging to the users for NAT traversal purposes, for just to keep alive, or for calculating the latencies to the user, ideally should be only one node responsible for that. You don't want to have all the nodes in the cluster pinging the poor the registered device. So yeah,
Or even worse, pinging it from the wrong location, right? Because how valuable is that?
Yes. So basically, there are operations that needs to be performed by OpenSIPS, which are which has to be, let's say, negotiated at the cluster level. Like, which is the node responsible for doing that? Even if you let's distribute the dialogue information, so the ongoing calls. If the call times out and you need to generate VoIP requests, for to caller and callee, ideally should be done only by a single node, not by all of them. So yeah, you have to decide, okay, which is the node to do this, or you handle presence and some presentity expires and you have to send a notification again. That's an operation that should be done only by a single node in the cluster, not by all of them. So yeah, we have a layer called the sharing tags, which do help us to, let's say, coordinate all the nodes in the cluster when it comes to performing certain operations like dialog timeout, pinging, even more like right now we have for the dispatcher or for the load balancer. Yeah, if you have multiple nodes, let's say, sending traffic to the same set of destinations, they can correlate one each other. Okay, who should be responsible for pinging the gateways or pinging the destinations behind the dispatcher and so on. So you can avoid having everyone pinging them. So we unified all this sharing tag support. So right now, by simply changing one sharing tag, you can completely, let's say, switch an OpenSIPS instance in a cluster from kind of an active to kind of a backup, like stop doing probing, stop generating dialog timeouts, don't do end user pinging, don't generate notification for expired presentities and so on. Again, with a single command on a single tag. That's quite cool.
Yeah, it is. It's key for like doing like a high level HA.
Yes, because yeah, that's it's a single point of controlling how your OpenSIPS should behave in an HA system combination. So yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, there was what it's a feature that, I think it's, yeah, the rework for the management interface. That's again something that will impact, hopefully in a good way, a lot of people. The management interface is quite used because that's the interface allowing you to interact from outside with OpenSIPS, and you have a lot of flavors in terms of backends. Like you do it through HTTP, you do it through datagram packages. You do it through a file, whatever. But in the same time, right now you have a lot of flavors in terms of how the data is packed. It might be like a really primitive way of packing per line, data like you have in the FIFO interface, or you may have an XML RPC, or now there is also JSON and so on. Well, in 3.0, this was completely reworked. There is a standard in terms of how the data is packed when passing and receiving it back from OpenSIPS, and that's JSON. And all these backends are simply providing a transport. So you can have JSON over HTTP, JSON over datagram, JSON over, let's say, simple HTTP TCP connection, and so on. So we made this quite simple and straightforward in terms of using, because again, because of the long history, we ended up with a bit of a mess in terms of combinations between transport channels like backends and the way of encoding the data. Now we say, okay, encoding is just JSON, and the backends are just responsible for the transport. So it will be quite easy and straightforward to communicate with OpenSIPS. But all the information may be available. It's available on this webpage with maybe links, additional links explaining, some details about each of them. The only thing that I really would like to mention, cool stuff, it's the tracing console. That would be an extension of the OpenSIPS CTL tool. So it's a kind of a external console tool for OpenSIPS. And with the tracing, application in the console will allow you to connect to OpenSIPS and get data only to a particular call. Like, okay, I want to get the SIP signaling, OpenSIPS logs, and script logs, and everything like this for that particular call, and not for anything else. That would be a great tool when it comes to troubleshooting. So you'll be able to, again, pinpoint to a certain call in order to receive all the information while being very silent with the rest of the traffic. And also in the OpenSIPS CTL, we're going to have a self-diagnosis tool, which, looking at different kind of parameters or statistics in OpenSIPS, it will try, because definitely it will not be 100% guarantee, to give you a hint what's going wrong, if there is something going wrong with your OpenSIPS, like pointing, hey, no, you have a very slow DB connection over here, or there is a slow DNS request, or maybe certain packages are very slow in handling, and so on. Or maybe saying, watch out, you are running on the edge when it comes to how much memory you have or how many processes you have. So again, looking at different kind of information, statistics provided by OpenSIPS, it can give you a hint with what's going wrong with your current setup. If for just to get an idea, you can take a look at the poll results to see the score for this is already sorted in ordered by the score. So just to see how the community sees this 3.0 release, based on the items. Again, for us, for maybe 50% of the items were kind of a surprise in terms of either being overrated or underrated by the community. But overall, that's the exercise we take for each release. Ask community, try to synchronize, because again, if you think about why do you run an open source project, it's not necessarily like a hobby, like something that you do because you have nothing else better to do. You do it because you want the people to use it. If it's not used, it's just at the end of the day just a waste of time. So we want to be sure that OpenSIPS is used, and the best way to do this is keeping all the time in touch, getting feedback in different possible ways, including by the upcoming OpenSIPS Summit in Amsterdam. That's also a great way to connect to the community and see, what people do expect from OpenSIPS. And I think
Have you set your dates yet for that?
Sorry.
What are the dates for it?
Oh,
You set the dates
yeah, it's set will be in the very, very, very beginning of May, starting with the 30th of April up to 3rd of May.
Cool. It's always a great conference.
And of course, again, it will be in Amsterdam. I mean, I don't think we will ever move away from Amsterdam in terms of the venue itself, in terms of the city, how accessible it is and how much fun you can have over there. Because let's face it, conferences are great. You go and you want to learn a lot of things, but at the same time, you want to have fun, right? It's you have to you want to have both. And Amsterdam, it's a really cool place for that.
That's for sure. I'll be flying out every year.
We'll be waiting for you.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I think we have some questions. Are you done with this?
Yes, I just wanted to say that probably that's a typical mistake. I overdo it in terms of explaining and talking about. So sorry for that. So if
Details are important.
to a certain level.
No. I think it's been really good, Bogdan. I've actually got a question if you're up for it.
I hope so.
Okay, so you've got routing script reloading coming. You've got dynamic module reconfiguration coming, and I also saw in there where you have routing per listener coming down the pipe too. So there's some really interesting scenarios that can happen there. As
Yes.
part of that dynamic reconfiguration and listener stuff, is it going to be possible to add and remove listeners on the fly without restarting OpenSIPS?
We are at least not targeting this for the 3.0 because anyhow we have a quite long list of things that needs to be changed in the internals, in the guts of OpenSIPS, and all these changes are really dangerous with a lot of side effects. So we don't want to push it too much for a single release, but to a certain point, it might end up on the list for, let's say, maybe for a 3.1, because 3.0 is not necessarily the end of the world. Yes, let's say if what we have on the list, it will be like a success in both ways, as development and usage, we may go even further with that.
Yeah,
Doesn't that kind of tie into partitions though?
Well, yeah. See, I mean, I do a lot of work in a multi-tenant type environment, so that type of feature would be really interesting to me, because then I could have a couple of OpenSIPS boxes with a couple of different IPs. I need to add a new customer, or I need to move a customer from box A to box B. It's still one instance of OpenSIPS. I'm just moving their IP address listener, and routing entry point from one machine to another machine without necessarily having to restart OpenSIPS in the middle of the day when they're running, the heaviest traffic loads. So
I hear you. Indeed, there are scenarios for this. With the 2.4, there were a lot of things solved in terms of being flexible in the network level with the Anycast support. Right now, we want to do some aliasing for the interfaces in OpenSIPS, so kind of a virtual interfaces inside OpenSIPS in order to make more flexible the clustering. Even if nodes they do have completely different interfaces, you can somehow logically bundle them together through some aliasing system. So yes, there are definitely a lot of things that you can do when you want to, let's say, work with on the how flexible you are when it comes to the networking layer. But we try to do it one step at a time, because first of all, whatever we change, we want to be sure that it's done in a proper way, so it's not like a quick hack around it. And secondly, whenever you do quite many changes at the same time, of course, the risks of breaking things will increase. So we don't want to compromise a release by throwing in a lot of changes that may
Check out the
produce.
put in. We only broke 12 other things to make it work, right?
Well, that's a happy case.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
That's a developer's challenge, right?
that's always a developer challenge. I mean, I've seen Tony, take, 3 or 4 different paths to implement a new feature, because each, the first couple of paths that he went down to do it, it would break some other feature. So, and developers don't always pay attention to that. But as somebody like Tony or somebody like Bogdan, being the leader of a big complex project like that, you got to pay attention to those kind of things. And
and test like crazy.
Yeah, because you can unintentionally break things. And
the whole development, sometimes it's a kind of backtracking thing, because you may go in a direction and you find out it's a dead end. Sometimes it's impossible. It's actually impossible to foresee all the implications, and you end up in the point where you say, okay, no, that's not the way to do it, and you have to go back and try a different approach on that. So yeah,
and that thing
it's not a straight one from the very beginning.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of cool features in here. I was actually, had pulled up the list and was looking down at the prefix for Xlog. That is super cool. That is super cool. Just for getting call detail out of the logs and trying to figure out what went wrong or what happened on a call. That's super cool.
Yeah, as I said, we are operating for, let's say, for other people, a lot of OpenSIPS based platforms. So let's say directly we can get a lot of experience in terms of what would be nice when it comes to operating OpenSIPS. So we can build our own, let's say not our own list, but the list coming from our own experience. But in the same time, again, looking at the things people do report on the mailing lists or other kind of discussions, we are keep collecting ideas or needs for this.
All right. Well, does anybody else have any questions for Bogdan? If you guys are following along on YouTube, throw them in there real quick. We've only got him for a few more minutes. We're actually a little bit over time already.
Sorry.
Don't worry about it.
No, don't worry about it.
No, don't worry about it at all. I'm more worried about Bogdan. It's like 9 p in the day for him already, so it's late in his day from over there in Eastern Europe. So we really want to let him get back to his family and everything sometime soon. I'm sure his wife would appreciate that.
Yes. Let's not go in that, because it's a very delicate subject about this.
Let's keep her happy. We want him sleeping at home, not in the office.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I'm just trying to check everything real quick. I think that's it. And I know Bogdan. I know there's several ways you can contact Bogdan. OpenSIPS has a great mailing list, the IRC channel. They've got Slack. Is there any other good ways to get in touch with you guys for people that, besides the website, for people that want to get help or want to find out more about the OpenSIPS and how they can implement it?
We try to keep the mailing list as an, let's say, primary communication channel, but still not limited to that, because you already mentioned there is an IRC channel, there is a Slack for OpenSIPS where people can ask. In the same time, anyone can use any let's say other social media engines we can be reached by Facebook, by LinkedIn, by even by Twitter if somebody really wants to do that. Yeah, so we are trying to be open also when it comes to the communication channel we are using. But again, for us, primarily is the mailing list, but not limited to that.
And that's the real magic of open source. And I've always said this, like the fact that you can actually send an email or send a Slack message and get in touch with the people that know the most about their own software. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, that is truly, it's magical.
Well, yeah, that's hard to, let's say, to judge from the other end. From our end, it's nice to communicate. Sometimes it's very also very difficult to do because there are so many people asking, and it's more or less let's say impossible to do it in a real time kind of a way, because again, people are using OpenSIPS on more or less different all possible kind of time zones. So basically, either you just woke up, either you are in the middle of the day or just getting to bed. There'll be somebody buzzing about something, So it's quite, let's say, dynamic community, and yeah, we are trying to do our best in terms of answering to everyone. Again, it's not even closer to real time, but as soon as possible, because it's about volume. It's about trying to avoid fragmentation of your work, and different things.
Well, thank you for coming in today. We really appreciate you. Talking
Thank
about
you,
what's
Michael.
new in the upcoming version.
Yeah,
And come back soon.
we will definitely, and we are waiting for you in Amsterdam. Don't forget about that.
Absolutely. Nope.
Yeah. So,
All right, Ken, back to you.
all right, Michael Mavrutis, thank you very much for chatting with Bogdan today. Bogdan, thanks very much for coming in and talking about OpenSIPS 3.0. Don't forget, guys, you can check out OpenSIPS at opensips.org. There's information there about everything you could need to know about OpenSIPS. And don't forget to support your open source developers like Bogdan and Anthony and his team. Contact these guys when you need help with, if you can't figure it out. That's how they keep the lights on at OpenSIPS, is by helping people, deploy OpenSIPS, do custom work, that kind of stuff. And they're really good at what they do. So contact them. Just like if you need help with FreeSwitch, you contact Anthony and his team over at freeswitch.com. So, definitely reach out to them. Go to OpenSIPS Summit, go to ClueCon in the fall, and, a lot of good conferences and stuff. If you can't make it to Amsterdam, Bogdan, you guys will be at ClueCon again, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, so you can come out and see Bogdan. You can come out and see Leeview. I don't know. Will you be bringing Razvan with you this year?
We haven't yet decided exactly what's let's say the combination in terms of who's going, because somebody has to stay back home and do some work, keep our backs.
We'll
Right?
just
Yeah.
turn the lights off in the office for a week and go to Chicago, man. That sounds like a plan.
Well, that would be really
Well,
awesome
Chicago's a
to be
fun
able to
town,
afford
too.
that. Yeah, but not now. Not exactly now, because
it's cold there right now. It's like minus 40. It doesn't matter whether it's Celsius or
Wow.
Fahrenheit. It's cold.
Yeah, it's already irrelevant.
Right.
It's cold by me too.
But yeah, so Bogdan, I'm sure we'll be in touch with you and get you back here on ClueCon Weekly in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up, guys. Don't forget, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and for you guys that are watching on YouTube, click that little subscribe button. I think it's right over here somewhere. And then once you click it, right next to it, there's going to pop up a little bell. You click that, and you'll get notifications when we're going live, when we post new videos. We've got a lot of cool guests coming up. Our friend Miss Madison back in the office, back in the ClueCon office, is making sure we keep packed with guests. If you have any suggestions for people to reach out to, drop us a contact. You can hit us via Facebook or Twitter for that, and we'll see who we can get scheduled to come in here and see us again. Again, guys, thank you and have a great week.
Thank you, Ken.
You've been watching ClueCon Weekly. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central. Keep up with the latest happenings by subscribing to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or visit us at freeswitch.com.